in reference to this?
Well, my understanding, this was a second World Conference on Racism, but I think it was the first one that involved the non-governmental organizations. They invited non-governmental people in rather than just the nations. And it was sponsored by the United Nations, specifically the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights was the person who coordinated the conference.
And he called this conference together in South Africa. Well, why was South Africa selected for this particular conference?
I don't know, except perhaps the fact that South Africa, being an example of a nation that had a real severe problem with racism, apartheid racism, and in 1994, with the election of Mandela, Nelson Mandela, the apartheid legislation was dismantled. And so I think South Africa then offers the image of hope, a nation that used to have legalized racism and now is moving toward freedom and equality for all people.
Now, you were there for approximately 2 weeks. What was your impression of what had happened in South Africa, having known South Africa before 1994 and after? I mean, how did you feel that things had changed, or did you see any manifestations of things not having changed as much as perhaps they should have changed? Talk about it from your own personal point of view.
Well, under apartheid, if you were a black African, you had to have a pass to go downtown, and particularly if you remained downtown after 7 p.m. You couldn't be downtown. Also, if you were a black South African under apartheid, you could not own a business. And you were confined to living in a certain part of the community. So you were severely restricted if you were a black African under apartheid. If you were colored, you had a little bit more freedom. If you were Indian, East Indian, you had a little bit more freedom. You could at least enter a business, you could own a business. And of course, if you were South African white, then there were essentially no restrictions on you. But now, the difference is that blacks have ascended to some degree politically. For example, after Mandela served as president, they elected another South African black. His name is Mbeki, and he's the president, and we got a chance to hear him speak, and I was very impressed. He seems to be a man of wisdom and a man of compassion. In addition, the mayor of Durban is a black man. So blacks are beginning to acquire some political power, but in terms of economic wherewithal or resources, business involvement, they still have a very long way to go.
And so racism might have dissipated somewhat in the political arena, which is to say that there are more more black Africans in political positions than ever before, in positions that they would not have been allowed to occupy prior to this time. Now, while changes have been made there, but you also believe that in some of these other areas, economic areas primarily, that's a real problem in terms of trying to bridge this gap between the haves, the have-nots, and those who... do you consider that to be a problem? Or what?
Yes, I mean the economic differential is a carryover from apartheid racism. There are other carryovers too. That's a real source of problems for South Africa right now. One is the poverty. Most of the poverty you'll find among South African blacks. Less so among South African Indians, less so among South African whites. Also, there's a problem of crime. And I interviewed many people, most of whom were cab drivers, and I asked them, why was there so much crime?
And of course, Dr. Poe, let me interrupt here for this first commercial break, which will give us an opportunity to come back to this issue of crime. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this short commercial break. Good. Yeah. The guest is Dr. Poe.